I often travel alone since my friends are usually tied up with their own lives or can't afford to join me on my frequent trips. On my first solo trip to San Diego, I was eager to explore since it was the only major Californian city I hadn't visited yet. I booked a decent hotel near downtown and arrived with high spirits. While checking in, I encountered a man slightly older than me in the lobby. He struck up a friendly conversation, asking where I was from, how long I'd be staying, and whether I'd visited before. He mentioned it was his second time in the city, and he was also alone. When he offered to carry my bags to my room since he was heading upstairs anyway, I accepted, grateful for the help. We rode the elevator to the second floor, where he set my bags down outside my door, wished me a pleasant stay, and walked off down the hall. I thanked him and entered my room, placing my bags on the bed before lying down to rest. After a quick nap, I headed downstairs, intending to go out for a bit, when the woman at the front desk called me over. She inquired about the man who had accompanied me upstairs and asked what he had done. I explained that he simply helped with my bags. Her response unsettled me. She said she'd noticed him standing outside the hotel for some time before following me in and mentioned that she didn't believe he was a guest. She advised me to stay away from him if I saw him again. Her words left me with an uneasy feeling, but I hoped she was wrong. I spent the day exploring the city and returned to my hotel in the evening to change for dinner. There was a different person at the front desk by then. After a quick shower, I changed clothes and laid down for another short nap. While resting, I heard a soft knock on my door, followed by a male voice quietly saying, "Housekeeping." This struck me as odd since I hadn't requested any service, and it was my first day there. Curious, I checked the peephole, but the hallway was empty. My mind immediately jumped to the man from earlier, and a sense of dread washed over me. I ignored the knock and called the front desk to confirm if housekeeping had been sent to my room. They hadn't, so I requested that someone come to my room for safety. A maid arrived a few minutes later, and I explained the situation to her before heading out for dinner. Afterward, I took a night tour of the city, enjoying the lights and lively atmosphere. I returned to the hotel around 10 p.m. and spoke with the front desk staff about my earlier encounter. I asked if they'd seen anyone matching the man's description, but they hadn't. To ease my worries, they checked the live surveillance of my floor, which showed no one in the halls. Relieved, I went back to my room. I changed into my sleepwear, turned on the TV, and eventually drifted off to sleep. I was in that hazy state between sleep and wakefulness when I heard the door close, but it blended into my dream. I didn't fully awaken until I felt the bed shift as if someone was climbing onto it. Terrified, I glanced over my shoulder and saw a man wearing a black mask and a baseball cap moving towards me. He grabbed me, trying to cover my mouth, but I fought back with everything I had, managing to scream loud enough to alert someone. The knocking on the door grew more urgent as I struggled against him. Realizing he was losing control of the situation, he released me and bolted out the door, knocking down the woman who had been knocking. She rushed in to help as I sat there, shaking and in tears. Other guests and hotel staff quickly gathered, and the police were called. Reviewing the hotel's security footage revealed that the man had somehow obtained a master key to access my room. His mask and hat concealed his identity, but I'm convinced it was the same man who had offered to help with my bags. It's chilling to think he might have targeted others in the same way. Though I tried to make the best of the rest of my trip, the experience haunted me. The hotel fully reimbursed me, moved me to another room, and provided the necessary footage to the police. Unfortunately, I was never contacted to identify anyone, leading me to believe the man was never caught. Looking back, I wonder if I should have taken legal action against the hotel. A few years ago, perhaps around 2013 or 2014, I experienced something that still haunts me to this day. The details are a bit fuzzy because, over time, I've tried to push it out of my mind. It was during Christmas break, and I was a freshman attending college in New York City. Being so far away from my family in Bulgaria, I decided to surprise them by flying home for the holidays. I arrived at JFK Airport just days before Christmas Eve, and the place was packed. After enduring long lines, security checks, and the general chaos of holiday travel, I finally boarded my flight to Istanbul, the first leg of my journey home. The flight was about 8 hours, and I prepared myself for the discomfort of the cramped economy class. Unfortunately, I was seated between two men. As a petite woman, standing barely 5 feet tall and weighing around 110 pounds, I felt a bit vulnerable. The man to my right was quiet, with dark hair and glasses, but the one to my left immediately made me uneasy. He would mutter to himself and pick at his skin, occasionally brushing his arm against mine. I tried to focus on the fact that I would be home soon, but his behavior became more unsettling as the flight went on. Every so often, I'd catch him staring at me intently, which I tried to dismiss, thinking perhaps he had some social issues. At one point, while I was watching the second season of American Horror Story, the man started talking to me. He questioned why I would watch a show that, in his words, misrepresented the mentally ill and murderers. His tone made my skin crawl, and I awkwardly asked if he needed anything, hoping he would leave me alone. Instead, he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I just think it's messed up that people think those who skin others alive are crazy. Aren't we all like that?" My heart raced as I tried to process what he had just said. I forced a nervous laugh, pretending to brush it off, but inside, I was terrified. The rest of the flight was agonizing, and I considered asking to move seats, but I was too scared to draw any more attention to myself. Finally, we landed in Istanbul, and I hurried off the plane as quickly as I could, hoping that would be the last I'd see of him. Unfortunately, the nightmare didn't end there. After a relatively peaceful Christmas, it was time to return to New York. My layover was in Brussels, and although I was uneasy, I didn't think much of it as I waited for my connecting flight. Then, out of nowhere, I remembered the creepy guy from my flight to Istanbul. My heart skipped a beat when I suddenly heard someone behind me muttering angrily. I turned around and was horrified to see the same man from the flight, glaring at me and cursing under his breath. I tried to stay calm, convincing myself it was just a coincidence, but when it was time to board, I was shocked to see that he was on the same flight again, and worse, he was seated right next to me. His appearance had changed slightly. Now he wore glasses and a bright yellow hat, with a scruffy 5 o'clock shadow. Panicking, I went to the front of the plane and explained the situation to a flight attendant. Thankfully, she offered me a seat at the back of the plane, and I spent the rest of the flight in a state of uneasy relief. To this day, I don't know if that man was deliberately following me or if it was some twisted coincidence, but the experience was one of the most disturbing I've ever had. Since then, I've never traveled alone again. My daughter and I visited the River Walk in San Antonio this past May, expecting a pleasant getaway, but what unfolded was far from the relaxing experience we had envisioned. Our plan was simple: drive from Houston to San Antonio, enjoy the sights, savor some good food, and explore the famed River Walk. However, things took a turn we never anticipated. After some online research, we booked a suite at a hotel that seemed perfect for our weekend stay. We were excited and looked forward to the trip. Checking in was smooth, and the room exceeded our expectations. We settled in for the night, eager to rest up for an early start the following day. But around 2:30 in the morning, the peace was shattered by a piercing fire alarm. The sound was deafening, and being on the 12th floor, we had no choice but to descend the stairs in a state of confusion and anxiety. The lobby was chaotic, filled with people trying to understand what was happening. Eventually, we were informed that it was a false alarm, and there was no fire. Relieved but still on edge, We returned to our room, hoping to get some sleep. However, sleep was elusive. My daughter repeatedly mentioned that she felt an eerie presence in the room. I tried to calm her, attributing it to her imagination, but the sensation grew stronger. It felt as if something cold and oppressive was lingering in the air, making it difficult to breathe. We lay there, paralyzed by fear, unable to move or speak. Finally, I mustered the courage to switch on the lights, half expecting to find someone in the room. But there was nothing. My daughter was in tears, and I felt utterly powerless. I reached for the phone to call the front desk, but it was dead. My cell phone had no signal either, and a sense of panic began to set in. We spent the rest of the night wide awake with the lights on, too terrified to sleep. As soon as daylight broke, we packed up and hurried to check out. The front desk clerk noticed our distress and asked if everything was okay. I explained the situation, mentioning the fire alarm and our sleepless night. She apologized, saying that the alarm occasionally gets triggered accidentally and that they would investigate the phone issue. Our weekend plans were cut short, and we decided to return to Houston. The experience left us both deeply unsettled, and we haven't spoken much about it since. What was meant to be a joyful mother-daughter trip turned into something we'd rather forget. We've agreed never to stay at that hotel again, and as for San Antonio, I'm in no hurry to return.